But Psalm chapter number 11, we'll just read a couple of verses to get started, then we'll go to the book of Judges, and tonight just kind of a few scattered thoughts and introduction, and we'll see where this leads us. I've been in my heart for several months to preach more on the home. And a couple of weeks ago, I preached here on a Sunday night on the home as a little church and how it ought to mirror a church. And I thought that would scratch that itch, so to say. But I continue to be burdened for our homes, not necessarily in a negative way, but in a positive way. And I think everybody knows that our family, the Fellure family, is a very close-knit family. We're very loyal to one another. And we're probably as close to our kids as any family in this church or any family that I know. And my wife and I, we were imperfect parents, but we were very deliberate. We were very passionate about how we wanted to raise our children. We were on the same page from the first day. And of course, we just crossed the 30-year anniversary mark, had to cancel Hawaii because of COVID. We'll do something in the spring. And our marriage is far from perfect. I know she would say that. But we have grown together, and we've been able to show each other a lot of grace that has not only kept us together, but glad to be together, and still happy to be married. And if there's one subject that I'm passionate about in preaching, it has to do with the family. It has to do with the home. I preach at different conferences. I'll be preaching one this week in Georgia. And sometimes I preach a Bible conference, sometimes a mission, sometimes a camp meeting. We'll do a couples retreat up in Buffalo next month. The meetings that I enjoy the most are when they ask me if I'll preach on the family. I enjoy that more than anything. Well, Psalm chapter number 11 and verse number 1, "In the Lord put I my trust. How say ye to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain? For lo, the wicked bend their bow. They make ready their arrow upon the string, that they may privately shoot at the upright in heart. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do?" I'm just going to take that verse as a springboard tonight. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? I look at all the families in our church and I think, well, what a strength for our church to have so many couples and so many children. What a blessing that is. And I think about the potential of future blessings for your life and the power of influence that you have upon this community and upon our nation through the home. I really believe that. But I also look at some families and I see how some raise their children and passiveness and laziness, and how that we even have little children in our church that are little rebels, and they're not sweet, and they're not submissive, and they're not sensitive to authority. And it's not bad. It's not bad for somebody to say, hey, you need a little help, all right? Now don't die on me, all right? I'm just warming up, right? I haven't even started preaching yet. I believe that every marriage in here can be a dream marriage. I believe that. I believe that every child in here can be sweet and submissive and obedient and respectful. And I believe that every young man and young lady in this room can grow up knowing how to properly interact with each other, that you can walk to the marriage altar pure as the driven snow, standing next to somebody that is pure. I believe that. And we're old enough now to be able to reap some of those blessings through our grandchildren and by having a relationship with our grown children and a mature love for each other in marriage. And I want that for every home in our church. I really, really do. And so the burden tonight is not to correct something that I see wrong necessarily, but to encourage young families to set a right course and to make that home the priority of your life and to find a holy path for your home and to walk in that. And tonight I just want to begin with some just general thoughts, and it may take me a couple of months to cover the ground that I want to. I want to deal with manhood, and I want to deal with womanhood, and then I want to deal with marriage. I want to talk about training children. I want to deal with the proper way to find a spouse. I want to talk about courting, all of that. And here's the thing: every subject that I talk about may not be for you, but there will be something for everyone, no matter if you're a teenager or if you're a grandparent. And I want to begin tonight just with this statement: if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? And I don't have to elaborate to you on how much our nation is falling apart before our very eyes. We are in more dangerous and depraved times than in any of our lifetime. And our national and political leaders are corrupt. Our universities are filled with Marxists and communists. Our economy is on the brink of a total collapse. Our morality as a nation is bankrupt. We have organizations like Black Lives Matters and Antifa that are allowed to burn cities to the ground and just lawless. There are tens of thousands of hardworking people that are losing their job because they're being forced to take a vaccine or their job. Critical race theory being taught in everywhere from the public school to government institutions to the military. They say that a caravan of over 50,000 immigrants are marching through Mexico headed for our border right now. So there is an invasion that our government is welcoming. And so I say that these are very troubling times. But if we point to government as the problem, then you'd have to think that government should be the solution. If our problem in America is a bad government or bad politicians, then the answer would be just to elect some better politicians or make some better laws, and our nation would be right back on the right track. And we know that that is not the answer. Because where our nation is in all of these areas is really just the fruit of a much bigger problem. How did we get here as a nation? Well, we got here by forsaking God. When somebody ever comes to me for counseling, and it is very rare, and I'm not a counselor, but I always approach whatever the problem is as a spiritual problem. The deepest problem of America tonight is a spiritual problem. It always is. I'm not a counselor, I'm just a preacher. If your marriage is on the rocks, if your children are struggling or whatever, it's not the marriage that is bad, it is the Christianity that is bad. Whatever your surface problem is, there is a deeper spiritual root problem. That is always the case. Now, you can go outside and just look around, walk through Walmart or wherever. You will readily see that as a nation, we are in a mess spiritually and morally. We're getting ready to enter into another political season, which means every Republican and every Democrat are going to have an ad, and their ad is going to say the same thing. Their ad is going to say, send me to Washington and I'll fight for you and I will fix all of the problems. But here's the problem. None of them will identify the problem. What about abortion? Is that a problem? What about sodomite marriage? Is that a problem in America? Transgenderism, is that a problem? What about the divorce rate? What about drunkenness? What about drug use? What about fornication on television? Are those problems? Those are problems. In fact, I would submit to you that they do more for the downfall of America than China, than COVID, than the national debt, than immigration or whatever. But even most Christians don't believe that, because there are Christians who will vote for a politician who is fiscally conservative but socially liberal. There are Christians who will vote for a pro-abortion candidate, but he says he'll fight the Federal Reserve and he's strong on immigration. And here's the reason why. That Christian doesn't know what the real problem in America is. The real problem in America is always spiritual. Now the verse says, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? The foundational structure to every society is the family. God gave us three institutions for the structure of society. He gave us the home, government, and the church. The foundation of all society is the home. If you don't have strong families, you won't have a strong church. If you don't have a strong church, then you won't have a moral nation. Destroy the families of any nation and you have torn down the foundation. Marxists know that. That's why there are so many attacks against the traditional home. And what we have watched in our lifetime is we've watched the erosion of the family structure. No fault divorce, that attacks the home. The blatant celebration of adultery in Hollywood, that attacks the home. The indoctrination of children in public school, and where they say that we have a right to teach our children, but you don't have a right to know what we're teaching our children, that attacks the home. Homosexual marriage, that attacks the home. LGBTQRSTUV rights, that attacks the home. Shows on television like The Bachelor, that attacks the home. We have a transportation secretary, a man who's married to another man. They just adopted a child, took 2 months off paternity leave. That attacks the home. Now, it's not just paganism and debauchery, but it's all designed to destroy the foundation, because you cannot have a strong foundation of a father and a mother and children and destroy a nation with that still standing. If every family in this church is full of adultery and cheating and lying and rebellious wives and unruly children, ain't nobody would want to come to this church, including me. The church would not be worth opening the doors if every family is a cesspool, and in a nation when the divorce rate is skyrocketing, when there is sodomy and adultery and abuse and children's rights over parental rights, then the very cornerstone of that society has been destroyed. That's what's happening in America. The answer is not another Republican. The answer is not better laws. The answer is to get back to the Bible. The problem is spiritual. Now, I want to give you an Old Testament example of that. And there is a book in the Bible that mirrors exactly what is happening in America today, and that is the book of Judges. And the book of Judges records a time in Israel's history when Israel was ruled by a succession of judges. It covers about 450 years. It is a very sad era in Israel's history. And there is a cycle that's repeated 7 times. It is apostasy and it is deliverance. And though Judges gives the history of just one period of Israel's history, it is really the history of all of mankind. History is the story of man's failures and God's interventions. One civilization after another, sin destroys, they build an empire and sin tears it to the ground. And in Judges, that cycle is centralized in Israel, but what happened to Israel happens to all civilizations. And if there is any picture of where America is right now, then that picture is the book of Judges. There's a phrase that is found in the book of Judges twice, if you want to write the reference down. It is Judges 17 and verse 6. In those days, there was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right in his own eyes. The last verse of Judges, chapter 21 and verse 25, it repeats that verse. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. So what you have is you have a nation whose roots were in God, but they have wholly, brother, you're going to have to give me more monitor, they have wholly forsaken the Lord, and they have turned themselves over to every immoral and adulterous way. And if you will read through the book, you will see how that they were every bit as corrupt and godless as this nation is. Now, here's what I want you to see. The national apostasy is highlighted there as a warning to every other generation and civilization to follow. That if Israel, with all of their privilege, can apostatize, so will any other civilization that forsakes God. And it doesn't take centuries, it only takes one generation. Now let me show it to you. Come to the book of Judges tonight, the book of Judges, and Judges chapter 2. And I've preached a message from this verse, and I will not preach that tonight. But here's the essence of what's happening. Judges 2, look at verse number 10. And also all that generation were gathered under their fathers, and there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. That generation is one generation removed from Joshua. But here is a generation, the Bible says, which knew not the Lord. And I got a message I preached on something's different in the generation, and I'll not preach that. But do you remember Joshua was the one that said that as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord? Well, I get the impression everybody didn't say that with him. There must have been a few men in Joshua's day who didn't have the same conviction and the same resolve that he did. And within one generation of that generation, all of the children are already into idolatry. Now watch this. The number one lesson to take from the book of Joshua is that the failure of the nation was precipitated by the failure of the family. Everybody who reads Judges focuses on how the nation apostatized. But I'm going to show you tonight that that would not have happened if the home had not apostatized. And what happened in the book of Judges is that the foundations were destroyed. When Satan attacks America, he's not attacking the White House. He's not attacking the Supreme Court. When Satan attacks America, he starts in your home. When Satan attacks this church, he's going to start in your home. And I want you to watch how he destroyed a nation in this day. And the same things that happened in the book of Judges are happening today as well. Now I'm just going to give you a survey tonight, just a broad survey tonight. And I want you just to see three things in the book of Judges. And the first failure that I want you to see in the book of Judges is there is a deficiency in male leadership. There is a deficiency in male leadership. Now, I'm going to get very politically incorrect right here, all right? But anytime that you bring up the issue of male leadership, then the liberal cry sexist, misogynistic, chauvinistic, whatever. Now, you listen to me tonight. Patriarchy is attacked in our society. Men are put down as weak and they're bullied into cowering and they're sissies. But you listen to what I'm going to say. The Bible is a patriarchal book. God called men to be leaders in the home and in the church and the government. And you listen, you can call it whatever you want, but that's how God set it up. It doesn't mean that men are smarter. It doesn't mean that they're more important. It doesn't mean that they are better. It is just how God designed it. Now, ladies, hang on. I'm going to get to the men. We're going to have a time when we talk about manhood, but I'm telling you tonight, this is how God set it up. I plan to preach on what is a man. But I will say for right now, and some people need to hear this, that in your home, the man is responsible for any breakdown. If your home is in tatters, if your relationship with your wife is not right, if your children are unruly, I am going to lay the blame at your feet. Your wife may not be supportive. Your wife may not be submissive. Your wife may not be spiritual. Your wife may not even be saved, but you are the man. And we need a revival of men becoming men again. Now let me show it to you. Look at Judges chapter 4. Look at Judges chapter 4. And this is the story of Deborah. Judges 4 and 5, the children of Israel, they're oppressed by the Canaanites. The king, he's inconsequential to the story, but the captain of the army is a man named Sisera. He's got 900 chariots of iron in his army. And if you're fighting against the army of footmen, if you've got 900 chariots, then you got an advantage. And for 20 years, they oppressed the Israelites. And here's what's unusual about this story is that God's going to raise up a deliverer, and he always raises up a man. But this time, he raises up a woman. Look at Judges 4. And look, if you would, and let's see here, verse number 21, I believe it is. Nope, I don't want that verse. I don't want her yet. Look at verse number 4, verse number 3. I'm in chapter 4, verse number 3. You be there with me. I got to get glasses if I wasn't so vain, but one day I'll break down and do it. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, for he had 900 chariots of iron. 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. And Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidus, she judges Israel at that time. Now, Deborah's not a warrior. She's a prophetess. So she's not going to raise an army and go out and fight against the Canaanites. She's going to bring a man named Barak. Name used to be Barak, but now it is Barak. And Barak is not a very courageous man. In fact, look at verse number 6. She sent and called Barak, and said unto him, hath not the Lord God of Israel commanded, saying, go and draw toward Mount Tabor, and take with thee 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali and the children of Zebulun. I will draw unto thee to the river Kishon Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him into thine hand. And Barak said unto her, now here's a man. Now watch this. If thou wilt go with me, then I'll go. But if thou wilt not go with me, then I'll not go. How would you like to be known for the rest of history? As the man who wouldn't go fight unless a woman went with him. Huh? That's what he's known for. And Barak is going to lead this army against Sisera, but he's not going to go home as a hero. Look at chapter, come to verse 16. Verse 16. Barak pursued after the chariots, after the host. And verse 17, Sisera fled away to his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. 18, Jael went out to meet Sisera, said unto him, turn in, my Lord, turn in to me, fear not. When he turned in unto her into the tent, she covered him with a mantle and said to her, give me, I pray thee, a little water to drink, for I'm thirsty. She opened a bottle of milk and gave him drink, covered him. He lays down. Verse 21, then Jael, Heber's wife, took a nail of the tent and took a hammer in her hand and went softly unto him and smote the nail into his temples and fastened it to the ground, for he was fast asleep and weary. And I love this part. So he died. No kidding. Huh? So it's another woman that actually kills Sisera. Now, it is an absolute disgrace that we send women into combat in our military. What kind of man allows a woman to fight his battles? And in the name of equal rights and squashing patriarchy, we have opened the door for women to go into the traditional roles of men. And every time that a woman breaks through a ceiling, a glass ceiling, then boy, that's a lot. And boy, we've made a great step forward to society and proving that we're not misogynistic and we're not sexist and we're breaking off the chains of male heterosexual white leadership or whatever it is. So the first time that a woman becomes a CEO and the first time that she's appointed to a cabinet post and the first time that she's a referee for the NBA or whatever it might be. Well, I'm going to tell you, Israel broke a glass ceiling here. This is the first time that a woman had to go to man to go to fight. Look if you will back in chapter 2, look at verse 9. Look at this again. And I've got my verses messed up here. And I can't see them. Where's verse 19? Where's the verse where he said, I'll go, but you got to go with me? Where's that verse at? Verse 8. Verse 8. No, it's not. Not in my Bible. Where's it at? Chapter 4? 40? Where? Here's what he said. He said, you go with me. I'm not going to go fight unless you go with me. Huh? How would you like to be that? And she said, you're not going to get any honor. Honor used to mean something to a man. Dignity and self-worth. And the worst thing that you could do to a man is insinuate that he's not a man. Yeah, men used to fight over that. His self-worth was in his courage and his dignity and his manhood. But men today, they don't care anything about honor. And Israel is to the place where there is no man to lead. And as you read Judges, you'll find situation after situation after situation where men fail in their leadership. And sometimes God raises up a woman because the best man for the job is a woman. But God's design has always been for male leaders. I am so patriarchal that I believe that our national leaders ought to be men. I do. So many evangelical denominations, they have put women in the pulpit and women pastors, and now you've got Joyce Myers and you've got Beth Moore, and all, what a mess, what a mess. Male leadership. And if that galls you tonight, then you're watching too much TV. Need to back off of it a little bit. Because there is not a single show that's produced by Hollywood which portrays a manly man with strong character and courage. Every male character is feminine and emasculated and wimpy and henpecked and woke. And you bring that into your home. The first failure of the home is a lack of male leadership. When the man will not lead his wife, when he will not discipline his children, when he will not guard what comes into the home, lazy, undisciplined, irresponsible, passive men who blame the wife for everything, blame the kids, blame the neighbor, blame the preacher, but never takes ownership for himself. Judges 6. Look at Judges 6, I think. Judges 6. Here's another time around for Israel. This time it's the Midianites. They've been plaguing Israel for 7 years, and this time God's going to raise up Gideon. Judges 6. Look at verse number 11. Came an angel of the Lord, sat under an oak, which was an Ophrah, that pertained unto Joash the Abiezrite. And a sudden Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. And Gideon has said unto him, Who, me? He said, Oh, my Lord, if the Lord be with us, why then has this befallen us? Now watch this. Where be all his miracles, which our fathers told us of, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord hath forsaken us and delivered us into the hand of the Midianites. So the Lord comes to Gideon, going to call him into action, and Gideon's first response is to argue, I'm not the man for the job. He's called a mighty man of valor. You wouldn't know that from reading the story. But here's what he said. He said, Where be all his miracles which our fathers told us of? Gideon's questioning God, why have you forsaken us? Because I was told by my father about the miracles that you did for past generation. So not reading between the lines, but here is a father who has told his sons about God and his miracles. He has passed that knowledge down to his children. That's what you're supposed to do, right? A father is supposed to teach his children about God, teach them the ways of God, teach them how to love and worship. Oh, that's wonderful. Look at verse 25. Look at verse 25. Came to pass the same night, the Lord said unto him, Gideon, take thy father's young bullock, even the second bullock of 7 years. Watch this. And throw down the altar of Baal that thy father hath. And cut down the grove that's by. His father was a hypocrite. He told his son about Jehovah God, and all at the same time, he built an altar to Baal. He spoke out of both sides of his mouth. He talked religion, but he lived like a pagan. Amen. I don't want to steal my thunder. I'm going to tell you, the surest way to kill any spiritual life in your children is to be a hypocrite at home. Amen. So all through Judges, time and time again, there is a failure of male leadership. If men had stepped up to the plate, and if they'd governed their home, if they'd been the spiritual leaders like they were supposed to be, this nation would have never descended into apostasy. And I don't want to take this as a rebuke because we have great fathers in our church. But hey, guys, be passionate, be very resolute, be very determined, be very dogmatic about being the men that God has called us to be. There is a deficiency of male leadership. The second thing here, and I'm painting with a very broad brush tonight, but there is a disintegration of marriage. Now, marriage is still between a man and a woman. And building a home on that is the bedrock of society. If you destroy the institution of marriage, then you've destroyed the cornerstone of society. I'll give you an example of that, all right? And stay with me tonight. The African-American community in America is among the most poorest demographics. Traditionally, highest crime rate, highest drug use, highest incarceration rate, all of that. And study after study after study has been done to find out what is wrong, and so millions and millions of dollars have been poured in to help specifically with grants and whatever to help the black community. That's fine. Could it be that 70% of all African-American children born in America this year are born outside of a traditional marriage with a father as part of that marriage? Could that be part of the problem? And even a lot of black leaders, African-American leaders, are calling out the absence of fathers and single mothers trying to raise their children to be the greatest contributor to the problem in their community. That has nothing to do with the color of your skin. That has nothing to do with racism. It has to do with the fact that the disintegration of marriage will destroy any society. Years ago, Hollywood came out with a show, and I think it was called Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire? Years ago. And basically a millionaire bachelorette and a bunch of women that wanted to marry him for his money. Well, that's very wholesome. And then they came out with a show called The Bachelor, which is the same thing, only this time it's not because of his money, but because of his looks. Now, I'm going to tell you something. If you watch those kind of shows, then you have a perverse heart. If you think that that mockery of marriage is entertaining, if you think that is funny, then you're part of the problem. But that is indicative of the mindset that America has toward marriage. Look, come to Judges chapter 3. Judges chapter 3. And look at verse number 5. Verse number 5. Judges 3, verse 5. The children of Israel dwelt among Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites. And they took their daughters to be their wives, and gave their daughters to their sons, and served other gods. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and forgot the Lord their God, and served Balaam and the groves. Now, somewhere along the way, I'm going to preach on how to find a spouse, how to court, how to treat a young lady while you're courting her, what to look for. Well, these Israelites, they didn't know, because they went out to the heathen, and they married lost people who didn't serve the same God that they did. They married outside the will of God. And when you do that, you are starting with the wind against you. Well, why do good girls raised in good churches choose to find a man that doesn't have a spiritual bone in his body, and that's the man that I want to marry and be the spiritual leader of my children? This is the man that I want to raise our children, knowing he's not going to raise them for the Lord. That's what they're doing. Look at chapter 14. Are we okay tonight? Chapter 14. I know you agree with all of this. Look at chapter 14. Verse 1, Samson went down to Timnath, saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. And he came up and told his father and his mother, said, I've seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me to wife. Then his father and his mother said unto him, Is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren, or among all my people, that thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said unto his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me well. So here's what you have. You have a young man who is a rebel, and he's demanding a wife against his parents' wishes. He is infatuated with her looks. That's all that he knows. She looks good. That's it. Huh? And I want to say something. I'm just saying right here. He's infatuated with her looks, and he cares nothing that she is a Philistine. And by the way, the marriage is not going to last. He's going to go after more women, and they're all going to be loose women. He married outside the will of God, and it brought him nothing but trouble is what it brought him. Yeah. Look at chapter 8. Chapter 8, I think, and look at verse 29. Verse 29. Let me see if I can see this here. Chapter 8, verse 29. Jerubbabel the son of Joash went and dwelt in his own house, and Gideon had 70 sons of his body begotten, for he had many wives. And his concubine that was in Shechem, she also bare him a son, whose name he called Abimelech. Gideon is one of the heroes of the book. But Gideon has 70 sons by who knows how many women. And it sounds like he's got a concubine stashed away in Shechem, so when he goes to Shechem, he's got a woman to spend the night with there. Huh? It's not God's will. It is a breakdown of marriage. When you have a national leader with multiple wives, 70 kids by who knows how many women, how are you going to lead the nation in righteousness? Do not expect any politician to take a stand against divorce or against adultery or running out on your wife. Why don't we, I tell you what, why don't we find every congressman and every senator who's been unfaithful to his wife or her husband and say, you're out of office? Why don't we do that, huh? Why don't we just pass a law that says that if you've been unfaithful to your wife, you are not fit for office and you can't hold anything higher than dog catcher? I'd vote for that law. I mean, if we can't trust you with your wife, how can we trust you with the nation? And we're going to preach on marriage, and so I don't want to steal my thunder right off the start. But you can't have a strong society that is fair and moral, that is the foundation of society, if the marriage has been destroyed. And we live in a nation where marriage is not honored. Marriage is not sacred. Marriage is not holy. But of all places, marriage should be cherished and honored in here. Our marriages should not be like the marriages of the world. Amen. Wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. Be not bitter against them. Yeah. Well, I don't feel like I love each other. Who cares? Well, I probably made a mistake. So what? Help me. Huh? Help me. Well, we didn't start out right. I feel trapped. I'm not sure I love him anymore. It's not the issue. If you're married, you're in the will of God to stay married, and you work it out, and you build a happy life together in the service of Jesus Christ. I'm just saying that in the book there is a disintegration of marriage, and when that happens, the nation's bound to fall. And there's a third thing that happens in the book of Judges, painted with a broad stroke. There is a dereliction of parental duty. Look at chapter 17, give you an example of it. Look at chapter 17. Judges chapter 17. And look at verse number 1. Now you watch this. There was a man of Mount Ephraim whose name was Micah. And he said unto his mother, the 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from thee, about which thou cursedst, and spakest also in mine ear, behold, the silver is with me. I took it. And his mother said, blessed be thou of the Lord, my son. Now that's weird. Okay? A grown son comes to his mother and says, that silver that's missing, I stole it. And she says, oh, that's okay. Bless your heart. Now, if you don't read any farther, if that's as far as you read, if you close your Bible, and it gets worse. But if you don't read any farther, here's what you have. You have a son who admitted that he's a thief, and you have a mother that's willing to cover up for him. Now, if I'd never read the rest of the story, if I didn't know what follows, and I do, but if I didn't know what followed, I'm going to guess it's not going to get good. And it doesn't. It gets a whole lot worse. But I'm going to tell you that's the condition of parenting today. Parents that are too weak to tell their children that you're going to do right and you're going to do what I tell you. Amen. And parents who make every excuse in the book for their children. When they do wrong, they won't submit to the teacher. They throw a fit in Walmart. You know, he's got a headache. He don't feel good. Huh? Come on, help me out just a little bit. Yeah. Look at verse number 3. When he had restored the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother said, I had wholly dedicated the silver unto the Lord from my hand for my son to make a graven image and a molten image. Now therefore I will restore it unto thee. What a hot mess. He gives it back to her. She says, I dedicated it to the Lord to make a molten image, and gives it back to the thieving son. I dedicated it to the Lord to make a molten image. Huh? She's spouting, bless the Lord this, and bless the Lord that, and bless the Lord this, and bless the Lord that, and making a graven image. Now again, just introduction. We're going to talk about raising children, but in this book you got siblings killing each other. You got a father that's sacrificing his daughter on an altar. You got a son stealing money from his mama, and mama blessing him for it. You have parents that are passive. You have children that are rebellious. You have sons making demands of the father, and mothers make excuses for their sons. That is America. That's the church. In fact, in some cases, that is this church. Yeah. Now, there's a lot more to consider on the home. I think that's all that we can right now. But here's the basics. It must start with strong male leadership. It is built on a healthy marriage. It becomes the environment for raising godly children. We got a lot to consider. We'll start right there. And I'm telling you that everything in this book is a total mess. And because the home was delinquent, the nation was destroyed. And America as a society cannot survive if the foundations be destroyed. Proverbs 22 and verse 28, remove not the ancient landmarks which thy fathers have set. A landmark helps you find your way. We give directions by way of landmark. You know, go past that tree, go around the red barn, go down the hill. We give. What if when you left tonight, there were no landmarks? From your place to your house, there are no street signs, there are no trees, there are no buildings. There's nothing, it's just straight, flat ground. Now, you get home, but how are you going to tell me to get to your home? The landmarks have been taken away, and our nation has lost its way. The foundation is being destroyed. And the greatest thing you can do for your nation, the greatest thing you do for your church, is have a strong home. And I say to you tonight, that every marriage in this church can be a dream marriage. And every little child can be sweet and submissive and respectful to all authority. Every one of them. I believe that. A few months ago, I preached up in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. The Norths are from that area. And preached at a church there. Wonderful church, wonderful preacher. Really enjoyed myself. And one afternoon, the preacher picked me up for lunch, took me to lunch. He said, I want to go show you two things. I said, sure. Now, I've been all over the country. I've seen every sightseeing thing there is to it. There's not a lot of things that excite me. If so, show you two things. So the first thing he showed me was Gravity Hill. Now, you go home and Google it. Not right now. You go home and Google it. You go down a country road, and there's a little lane. There's a little lane that goes down a hill. Not a steep grade, but it's definitely down grade. And you go down that hill, maybe just a couple hundred yards, go down that hill, and it'll flatten out. When you just get to the bottom of that hill, you stop. Put your car in neutral, take your foot off the brake, and your car will roll backwards up that hill. Now you think I'm lying. I'm not lying to you. If you get to the bottom, anywhere on that hill, if you'll get out and take water and pour water out on the road, that water will flow back up the hill. It's Gravity Hill. I saw it with my own eyes. I was there. I know what I'm talking about. Gravity Hill. He's going to show you something else. He's going to say, I want to take you to a town. He said, I want to take you to Centralia, Pennsylvania. I said, sure. Centralia, Pennsylvania. You go home and look it up. It's a ghost town. When you drive through town, you drive down the main street, and there's all these side streets. There's sidewalks, there's side streets, there's a little picket fence, there's a slab, there's a fire hydrant. No buildings. No houses anywhere. It almost looks like somebody came in and picked up the town and just carried it away somewhere. And basically that is what happened to Centralia, Pennsylvania. And the story as to how that town completely disappeared is fascinating. In the early part of the 20th century, southeastern Pennsylvania was coal country. And in fact, Centralia, Pennsylvania had 14 active coal mines at one time just in that town. But in May of 1962, and I come to the piano, in May of 1962, the town needed to build a new landfill. And so they were going to burn the existing landfill, and they was going to build another one around it. So the firemen come, they set it all on fire, they let it burn. It all burned down to ash, and then the firemen came in, and they put the fire out. They extinguished the fire. 2 days later, the fire started back. They came in, they put the fire out. 2 weeks later, the fire came back. Every time they put the fire out, the fire came back. So they got to researching, and they finally discovered that the landfill had been built on top of a coal mine, and that the fire was burning the coal down, not up. There was a fire that was spreading down. And the city thought that the fire would eventually just burn out, but it kept burning, it kept spreading, and there was a web of tunnels and a labyrinth of coal veins underneath the ground, and that fire was spreading all over, but it was all spreading under the ground. Residents started complaining of carbon monoxide coming into their homes, and they started seeing smoke rising up out of the ground mysteriously. Trees died, ashes were everywhere. Experts were called in. They spent millions of dollars trying to figure out how to put this fire out that's burning underneath the surface. And eventually the town realized we're just going to have to live with it and hope that the fire just die away. It's been 60 years. The fire is still burning. Trees began to die. The ground was ashy. Sidewalks and streets began to buckle. There was a sinkhole that was opened up in the middle of town. It was 150 feet deep. And it became apparent that this town is no longer safe for anybody to live in. So the federal government came in 1982, and they appropriated $42 million to buy the town, shut it down, and relocate everybody, demolish all of the buildings. There were legal battles because some people didn't want to leave their homes. The weekly newspaper ran a column every week of all the people that week had sold out and they had moved. The state of Pennsylvania, they revoked the zip code for that town. They used eminent domain to try to push residents out. In 2013, just a few years ago, there were 10 remaining residents, and they won a legal battle where the state of Pennsylvania had to pay them $347,000 each for their property, but the agreement is that they could live in their house till they die. But when they die, you can't sell it, you can't will it to somebody else. When you die, government takes over, demolish the building. Right now, there are 6 people that still are hanging on, living in Centralia, Pennsylvania. And that fire is still burning underneath. And they estimate there's enough coal in those veins for that fire to last for another 250 years. When Brother Tim Perry drove me through that town, he didn't tell me the story. He said, I just want you to see the town. And we drove through a main highway, 4-lane highway, come down a hill, and we come to this town. There's no stop sign, there's no red lights. There are stop signs. And you drive down through, you're driving down to Main Street. There's a sidewalk, there's slabs, there's a fire hydrant, there's a stop sign. And I'm driving through and I don't know the story. And I'm thinking something's wrong. There is something missing. There's a problem here and I can't put my finger on it. Little did I know that for the last 60 years, something had been burning underneath. And all that I could see was buckled sidewalks, empty lots where houses used to stand, a main street that had no buildings. And I knew something is wrong here. And when he told me the story, it all made sense. And in your home tonight, there could be something that's burning underneath the surface. And we could sense that something's not right. There's something about this picture that just doesn't look right. But when it becomes evident of what's underneath the surface, then all of a sudden it makes sense. And you can't let something smolder in your home, your marriage for years, because that fire is going to cause untold destruction. A fire that nobody can see, that has burned for 60 years, wiped an entire town off the map. And the fires that burn in your home that nobody can see will bring the same ruin to your home. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do?